She was just a poor orphan, abandoned after losing her parents and cruelly kicked out by her uncle. With nowhere else to go, she turned an incomplete building into her home and fought daily for survival. Then one day a beggar appeared, not only asking for food but for her heart. She welcomed him into her broken world, never knowing he carried a life-changing secret. He was a billionaire in disguise. What unfolds in this powerful story will leave you speechless. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you're new here, kindly subscribe and join us on this unforgettable journey of lessons, love, and second chances. Now, let's get into it. The afternoon sun sat high above the bustling Enugu market, its fiery rays bouncing off the rusted zinc roofs and casting restless shadows across the narrow, crowded streets. The air was thick with smoke from roasted corn, the sweet scent of fried akara, and the earthy dust kicked up by hurried feet. Hawkers screamed their prices until their voices cracked. Women balanced basins of vegetables on their heads. Children darted through the crowd, their laughter clashing with the impatient horns of Danfo buses trapped in traffic nearby. In the middle of this noisy chaos, Ella moved slowly, her tray of fruits trembling in her small hands. She was only 19, but her eyes carried the weariness of someone who had lived a lifetime of sorrow. Her once plump cheeks had grown lean, and the Ankara wrapper around her waist was faded and torn at the edges. She forced a smile and called out to passers-by, "Fresh bananas? Sweet oranges, please buy." But the buyers ignored her. Some wrinkled their noses at the sight of her tired clothes. Others whispered behind her back. A group of teenage boys leaning against a stall burst into cruel laughter as she walked past. "Look at her," one mocked, "the orphan girl again, selling fruits that even goats won't buy." Another added with a sneer, "Why don't you join your parents in the grave instead of disturbing us?" Their words cut like a knife. Ella kept her eyes fixed on the ground, pretending not to hear, but her chest burned. She tightened her grip on the tray and whispered silently to herself, "Don't cry. You must not cry." Her parents had been everything to her. Her father, a schoolteacher who earned just enough to put food on the table, and her mother who sold beans and pap in the mornings. Life had been simple, but there had been laughter, love, and warmth in their small home. But all that vanished 2 years ago, swallowed by the cold hands of death. First, her father fell sick with a malaria they could not afford to treat. Before she could recover from his burial, her mother died from heartbreak and exhaustion. Ella thought her uncle, her father's younger brother, would take her in. For a brief moment, she felt hope when he welcomed her with words of comfort. But within weeks, the kindness faded, and his true face showed. "You are a burden," he spat one morning when she asked for breakfast. "Do you think food grows on trees? My children will not starve because of you. Go and fend for yourself." When Ella begged for shelter, he struck her across the face and shoved her out of his compound, her few clothes tossed in a black nylon bag. She wandered the streets that night, tears streaming down her cheeks, until she stumbled upon an incomplete building near the market square. The building was nothing but cement pillars, half-finished walls, and a roof of corrugated zinc riddled with holes. Rats scurried freely, and at night snakes slithered in the shadows. Yet to Ella, it became her only refuge. She spread her wrapper on the rough cement floor and whispered prayers to her parents, wishing she could hear her mother's voice again. Each morning she rose early, washed her face at the public tap, and carried her tray of fruits into the market. That tray was her only lifeline, but survival was cruel. Sometimes she sold enough to buy a little gari for supper. Other times she returned empty-handed, her stomach gnawing in pain as she curled up on the hard floor of the incomplete house. Still, she refused to give up. "I will survive," she whispered each night. "Mama, Papa, I will not let your name be trampled in the dust. I will survive." It was on one of such scorching afternoons, when her legs were weak from standing and her lips dry from calling out to buyers, that she noticed him for the first time. He stood a little distance away, his appearance worse than hers. His clothes were nothing but tattered rags, his hair unkempt, his face darkened by the sun. In his hands he held a rusted tin bowl that rattled with only a few dirty coins. He shuffled toward her with slow, uncertain steps, as though expecting to be chased away. "Please," his voice cracked, weak like dry leaves. Anything for food. Just 1 naira, 1 orange, anything. The market, women hissed and turned their backs. A butcher yelled, "Get away, beggar! Don't spoil my business." A tomato seller waved her broom as if to sweep him like trash. Ella's heart twisted. She saw not a beggar, but a man broken by life, humiliated by the same cruel world that had cast her aside. Without hesitation, she bent over her tray and picked the smallest banana. Her fingers trembled as she pressed it into his hand. "Here," she said softly, meeting his eyes. "Eat. Don't mind them." For a moment he froze, staring at her as though he couldn't believe her kindness was real. Slowly he peeled the banana, tears shining in his eyes. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice heavy with gratitude. "Ella," she replied, brushing dust from her wrapper. He bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Ella. People rarely see me as human anymore." She gave a small smile. "Then today, I see you." Neither of them knew it yet, but that single act of kindness would become the spark that lit a fire greater than all the mockery, pain, and rejection surrounding them. In the ashes of yesterday, something new was being born, an unlikely bond between a poor orphan girl and a beggar the world despised. And it was only the beginning. The days after their first meeting seemed to carry a strange new rhythm. Every morning when Ella balanced her tray of fruits on her head and walked into the market, she noticed him. Obi. He no longer stood far away with his rusted tin bowl waiting for scraps. Instead, he walked directly toward her fruit stand, greeting her with a shy smile. "Good morning, Ella," he would say, his voice quiet, almost unsure. And though the market women hissed and sneered, Ella always replied warmly, "Good morning, Obi." At first, he simply sat on the edge of the broken wooden bench near her stall, silently watching the crowd. But soon he began helping in small ways, chasing away the flies that swarmed over her bananas, or carrying her tray when her arms grew weak. The other traders were not amused. One afternoon, as Obi helped her arrange the oranges into neat pyramids, a pepper seller nearby burst into mocking laughter. "Ella, you, an orphan, cannot even find a normal friend. You went to pick a beggar." "Nawe oh," another joined in, her voice dripping with scorn. "If you don't take care, that beggar will soon steal your tray and disappear." "Don't say we didn't warn you." The laughter spread like wildfire. Ella's face burned, but she lifted her chin and spoke firmly. "He has stolen nothing from me. Instead, he gives me what none of you ever did. Respect." The women scoffed and turned away, but Obi looked at her, his eyes wide with emotion. "Why do you defend me?" he whispered when the others left. Ella gave a small smile. "Because you are human, Obi, and humans deserve dignity, no matter how the world treats them." That day, Obi swore silently in his heart that he would never forget her words. As weeks passed, their companionship deepened. In the noisy chaos of the market, they carved out a little island of peace. They spoke about their lives, their past, their dreams, though Obi always spoke vaguely, never revealing much beyond his struggles as a beggar. Ella, on the other hand, told him everything: how her parents died, how her uncle had thrown her out, how she found shelter in the incomplete building. Obi listened intently, his face darkening with quiet anger. "Your uncle is a wicked man," he muttered once, "to cast you out when you had no one." Ella shrugged. "Perhaps. But crying over it won't change anything. I must live." Her resilience fascinated him. Here was a girl who had lost everything, yet still found the strength to smile, to show kindness, to survive. One evening, as the market thinned and the last rays of sunlight painted the sky orange, Obi turned to her. "Ella," he began, his voice hesitant, May I be your friend? Not just someone who eats your fruits or sits at your stall, but a true friend." The words caught her off guard. For a long moment, she stared at him. Since her parents' death, no one had asked to be her friend. People either mocked her, ignored her, or used her. And now here was a beggar, dirty, ragged, despised, asking for something no one else had offered her. Her lips curved into a slow, fragile smile. "Yes, Obi." I would like that. Obi's eyes softened, and for the first time since she had met him, Ella saw a flicker of joy break through the weariness on his face. Their friendship soon became the talk of the entire market. Everywhere she went, whispers followed. Have you seen her? That orphan girl, walking with a beggar. What a shame, she must be cursed. Imagine being proud of a beggar as a friend. Tomorrow she will be pregnant for him and start begging too. Mark my words. Sometimes people spat on the ground as she passed. Others laughed openly in her face. Yet Ella never wavered. One particularly cruel afternoon, as Obi carried her tray home, a group of young men blocked their path. Orphan girl, one of them jeered. So this is your husband? A beggar? Another reached out and tried to snatch the tray from Obi. Why don't you both go and build a house under the bridge? That's where beggars belong. Before Obi could react, Ella stepped forward, her eyes blazing. Enough, she shouted, her voice ringing through the street. You can laugh at me all you want, but leave him alone. He is my friend, and I will never be ashamed of him. The young men blinked in surprise, then muttered insults and walked away. Obi stared at her in awe, his hands trembling. Ella, his voice cracked. No one has ever stood for me like that. Not once in my life. She placed a hand on his arm. Then let today be the first. You are not alone anymore. Obi swallowed hard, his heart pounding. In that moment, something shifted deep within him. He realized Ella was more than just a kind girl. She was his anchor, the one person who saw him as more than his rags. That night, as they sat outside the incomplete building under the moonlight, Obi gathered his courage. Ella, he said softly, I have nowhere to stay. I sleep wherever darkness meets me, on the roadside, under stalls, by church gates. But I am tired. I need shelter. Could I stay with you? Ella's breath caught. She stared at him in silence, her mind racing. What could she offer him? She herself was homeless. She lived in broken walls, surrounded by rats and damp floors. Finally, she let out a bitter laugh. Obi, you don't know what you're asking. I live in ruins, an incomplete building. No doors, no bed, no roof, just cracked cement and shadows. But if you don't mind sharing that, then yes, you can stay. Obi's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Ruins with you, Ella, would mean more to me than palaces without you. That night, for the first time in years, Obi slept under a roof. And though the walls were broken and the floor hard, both he and Ella felt something stir in their hearts. A strange, fragile hope that perhaps even in the filth of poverty, love could still take root. The first night Obi spent in Ella's incomplete building was filled with silence, broken only by the rattling of zinc as the wind whistled through the cracks. The moon poured silver light through the gaping holes in the roof, painting the cement floor where the two of them lay side by side. Ella had given him her only wrapper to use as cover, shivering quietly in the cold herself. You should keep it, Obi whispered, noticing her tremble. She shook her head stubbornly. You're my guest. Guests are to be treated with respect. Obi stared at her in awe. No one had ever called him a guest before. For years he had been chased away from shops, insulted in churches, treated worse than stray dogs. Yet this orphan girl, herself despised, saw him differently. The following morning, Ella rose early as usual to wash her face at the public tap. When she returned, she found Obi crouched by her small charcoal stove, trying to light a fire with shaky hands. What are you doing? She asked, amused. I thought I should help, Obi said, his face smudged with charcoal. You do too much already. Ella laughed for the first time in months, a sound like broken glass mended into music. You're making the fire worse, Obi. Here, let me... She took the sticks from him and skillfully arranged them, blowing until the flames came alive. They shared their breakfast, 2 boiled plantains and water scooped from an old plastic bucket. The meal was meager, but as Obi watched Ella chew thoughtfully and smile at him, it felt like a king's feast. Ella, he said suddenly, you're stronger than anyone I know. Look at you, living in ruins, yet still laughing. Ella shrugged. If I don't laugh, Obi, I'll cry. And I've cried enough for one lifetime. Her words struck him deep. He realized she carried pain heavier than her fragile shoulders should bear. As days turned into weeks, their companionship grew into something unbreakable. They worked together to survive. Obi would help her carry her tray of fruits into the market, When her feet grew sore, he massaged them gently, surprising her with the tenderness in his rough hands. In return, Ella shared her food with him, patched the tears in his clothes, and told him stories of her childhood, stories that made them both laugh despite their hunger. But laughter was not enough to shield them from the world's cruelty. One afternoon, as Ella shouted to attract buyers, a wealthy woman in lace stopped to purchase some bananas. Obi, eager to help, handed the woman her change. She recoiled instantly, her face twisted in disgust. "Did this beggar just touch my money?" she cried loudly. She flung the coins onto the ground. "You filthy things! Ella, so this is your assistant? A beggar? No wonder your life is cursed." The crowd erupted in laughter. Some pointed, others echoed her insults. Ella's face burned, but she lifted her chin and picked the coins from the ground with quiet dignity. Handing them back to the woman, she said firmly, "He may look poor, but he is richer in heart than all of you who mock him. If you cannot respect him, then don't buy from me." The woman gasped, scandalized, and stormed off. The market buzzed with shock. Who was this orphan girl to defend a beggar so boldly? Obi's throat tightened as he whispered, "Ella, why do you always fight for me?" Her eyes softened. "Because I know what it feels like to have no one fight for you. You stood by me when others mocked me. Now I will stand by you." Obi felt his chest tighten with an emotion he had not allowed himself to feel in years. Hope. That night, back in the incomplete building, rain pounded on the zinc roof, the water dripping onto the cement floor in steady rhythms. Ella sat on the ground, her wrapper clutched tightly around her shoulders. Obi sat beside her, the storm's roar wrapping them in a cocoon of intimacy. "Ella," he said softly, "do you regret letting me stay here?" She turned to him, her eyes shining in the dim light. "Never. You filled my silence with laughter. My days are no longer empty. If anything, Obi, I should thank you." For a long moment, their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between them, a spark too fragile to name. The following weeks brought them closer still. They created routines to survive. Obi swept the dusty floor of their broken shelter, Ella fetched water, and together they prepared their humble meals. They even made games of their poverty. When their only pot cracked, they laughed and called it their golden pot of treasures. When Ella tripped one day and spilled their gari into the sand, Obi scooped some and pretended to eat it, saying, "Ah, Ella, this sand has more taste than suya." She laughed until tears streamed down her cheeks. The market people, however, grew crueler. "Kui the beggar and his orphan wife," they jeered. "When they have children, will the rats in the building babysit them?" Ella ignored them, but inside her heart ached. Each insult was a wound she could not show. One evening, as they sat by the dying fire, Obi reached for her hand. His voice trembled. "Ella, I don't just want to be your friend anymore. I want to be more. Will you be my girlfriend? Girlfriend?" The words hung in the air like a fragile bird. Ella's breath caught. She thought of the market gossip, the humiliation, the shame. She thought of her empty future, her shattered dreams. And then she looked at Obi, at his eyes, so full of sincerity, so full of a love that expected nothing in return. Her lips trembled into a smile. "Yes, Obi, I will be your girlfriend." Obi exhaled shakily, tears welling in his eyes. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, holding her as though she were the only treasure he had left in the world. Outside, the wind howled through the broken windows of the incomplete building. But inside, amid ruins and hunger, two hearts had found a bond, stronger than shame, stronger than poverty, stronger than fire. The moon was a pale lantern in the night sky, spilling its silver light into the incomplete building. Shadows danced along the broken walls, and the cool breeze carried with it the scent of wet earth. Obi and Ella sat side by side on the cracked cement floor, their backs against a half-finished pillar. A small fire flickered between them, struggling to stay alive against the gusts of wind. They had eaten nothing more than roasted groundnuts that evening. Still, they talked as though their stomachs were full, sharing laughter, dreams, and secrets. Obi's laughter faded first. He grew quiet, staring into the fire. His rough hands fidgeted with a piece of broken stone, his jaw tightening as if he was at war with himself. Ella noticed. "What is it?" she asked softly. Obi turned to her, his eyes glistening in the dim light. For a moment he said nothing. Then with trembling hands, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny bent copper wire, crudely twisted into the shape of a ring. Ella gasped. Her heart pounded as he dropped to one knee, the fire casting long shadows across his worn-out clothes. "Ella!" His voice cracked, thick with emotion. "I am a beggar. I have nothing. No house, no family, no riches. I have lived my life from dustbin to dustbin, from shame to shame. But in you, I found something I never thought I'd have again. A reason to live." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Obi pressed on, his hands trembling as he held out the ring. "I cannot promise you gold. I cannot promise you silk gowns or feasts. All I can give you is this broken heart, this empty life, this beggar's hand. Ella, will you be my everything when I have nothing?" Tears streamed down Ella's cheeks. The world mocked her. Her uncle rejected her, and even the market women spat at her existence. Yet here was a man, ragged and despised, asking her not out of pity, but love. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she whispered, "Obi." Her voice broke. She wiped her tears and nodded. "Yes, yes, I will be your everything." Obi's entire body shook as he slipped the crude copper ring onto her finger. It wasn't gold, but to Ella, it was more precious than diamonds. She threw her arms around him, and they held each other tightly, as though the entire broken world was outside that embrace. For the first time in years, Ella felt chosen. For the first time since his disguise began, Obi felt seen. The following morning, Obi woke earlier than usual. He paced restlessly around the incomplete building, his eyes sharper, his movements more deliberate. Ella, still drowsy, sat up and stretched, smiling at the sight of her ring glinting faintly in the sunlight. "You've been restless since dawn," she said, amused. "What's on your mind?" Obi turned to her, his expression unreadable. Then suddenly he spoke with a firmness she had never heard in his voice before. "Ella, pack nothing. We are moving out." Ella blinked. She thought she had misheard him. "Moving out? To where? Another abandoned house?" She gave a small laugh, thinking it a joke. Obi shook his head slowly. "No, Ella. We're moving to our deserved home." Her heart thumped violently. She sat up straighter. "Obi, what were you saying?" "Our deserved home? You speak as though you know something I don't." His eyes softened, and he walked over to her, kneeling down so their faces were close. "You accepted me when I had nothing. You loved me when the world spat on me. You defended me when everyone else mocked me. And because of that, you deserve more than broken walls and leaking roofs." Ella's brows furrowed. "But Obi, where will we go? How? We have no money. Even the gari we eat is from the mercy of small sales." Obi smiled faintly, his lips curving into something almost mysterious. "Trust me, Ella. Tomorrow you will see, but don't carry anything with you. Leave this place behind. The pain, the shame, the ruins, none of it will follow you where we are going." Ella stared at him, confusion swirling in her chest. Part of her wanted to laugh and call it a dream. Another part trembled with fear, fear of disappointment, fear of being abandoned. "Obi," her voice wavered. "I don't understand." He cupped her face gently, wiping away the tears that had begun to form. "You don't need to understand yet. Just trust me. Tomorrow your life will never be the same again." That night, Ella lay awake long after Obi had fallen asleep. She stared at the broken ceiling, listening to the whistling wind slip through the cracks. Her mind was restless. What could Obi possibly mean? He was a beggar. She had seen him with her own eyes, bowl in hand, begging for coins. He owned nothing. He had nothing. Yet his words had been filled with such certainty, such unshakable confidence. Could it be? She whispered to herself, then shook her head. No, impossible. And yet, as she turned to look at him sleeping peacefully beside her, she felt something stir within her. A flicker of faith, a dangerous hope she dared not embrace. The incomplete building suddenly felt different that night, less like a permanent prison, more like a cocoon about to break open. Ella clutched the copper wire ring on her finger, closed her eyes, and whispered, If Obi says tomorrow will be different, then I will trust him. And in the silence of the night, the bond they had built in fire and ruins grew even stronger. Bound not by gold or comfort, but by trust, the sun rose reluctantly the next morning, painting the sky in streaks of pale gold and purple. A rooster crowed somewhere in the distance, its voice cracking over the hum of the waking market. Inside the incomplete building, Ella stirred from sleep, her mind heavy with Obi's words from the night before. Pack nothing. We are moving out. She sat upright, staring at the copper wire ring on her finger. The thought felt absurd. Moving out? To where? They had no relatives, no friends, no money. Her heart ached with both hope and fear. Obi, however, was already awake. He stood by the doorway of the broken house, his frame silhouetted against the morning light. His face was calm, almost unreadable, as though he carried a secret too heavy to share. Good morning, Ella said quietly. Obi turned to her with a small smile. Good morning, my everything. Her cheeks flushed, but the knot of confusion in her stomach only tightened. Obi, are you serious about what you said last night? About moving? He walked over, crouched beside her, and took her hand. Ella, I've never been more serious in my life. Today is the beginning of your new story, but I beg you again, pack nothing. Leave everything here. Ella's eyes flicked to her small belongings, a faded wrapper, a cracked plastic bowl, a tray with a few fruits. The idea of leaving them behind terrified her. They were worthless to others, but to her, they were her entire world. Obi, this is all I have left of my life. My tray, my wrapper, even my bowl. He pressed a finger to her lips gently. You don't need them anymore. Where we are going, you will have more than enough. Trust me, Ella. Trust me one last time. His words were soft, but they carried a strange authority that stilled her protests. Against her fears, she nodded. I trust you. By mid-morning, the marketplace was alive with noise and color. Ella walked through it beside Obi, her head bowed. The gossip began immediately. See them? The beggar and his orphan wife. Where are they going so early? To beg under the bridge? Ella has finally lost her mind, following a beggar everywhere. Ella's face burned with shame, but Obi walked with confidence, ignoring the sneers. He held her hand tightly, as though shielding her from the arrows of their mockery. At the edge of the market road, Ella stopped suddenly. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. Parked by the roadside was a sleek black SUV, its polished surface gleaming under the sun. The driver, a man in a crisp suit, stepped out immediately and bowed. Good morning, sir, the man said respectfully. The car is ready. Ella froze. She looked at Obi, then back at the driver, then at the car again. Her heart raced wildly. Obi, she whispered, her voice trembling. What is happening? Why is this man calling you, sir? And whose car is this? Obi smiled faintly, squeezing her hand. Ours. It's here to take us home. Ella stumbled back, shaking her head. Home? Obi, this doesn't make sense. We're beggars. We don't own cars. We don't have drivers. The driver glanced at Ella curiously, but Obi lifted his hand, silencing any questions. He opened the door for her like a gentleman, his eyes locked on hers. Ella, get in. Trust me. Her legs refused to move. Her mind screamed warnings. This is a dream. This is madness. It can't be real. But when she looked at Obi's face, so calm, so certain, she felt her resistance weaken. Slowly, with trembling hands, she stepped into the SUV. The door shut softly behind her, and in that instant, she felt her entire life of poverty crumble like dust. The car moved smoothly through the streets of Enugu. Ella clutched the edge of the leather seat, her eyes wide as she watched the familiar slums, kiosks, and crowded stalls fly past. She had never sat in a car like this before. The air inside was cool, the seats soft, the silence too thick. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Obi, she whispered again, her voice breaking. What is going on? Please tell me. Who are you really? He glanced at her, his eyes unreadable. Ella, I told you yesterday. You will see. Just wait a little longer. But I'm scared, she confessed, tears filling her eyes. I don't understand any of this. Yesterday we were in ruins, And today we are riding in a car I've only ever dreamed of touching. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Obi reached across the seat and took her hand. Don't be afraid. Everything I do now is for you, for us. His touch calmed her slightly, but her thoughts still churned. She pressed her forehead against the window, watching the scenery change. The car left the busy markets behind, entering wide, paved roads lined with tall trees. Then it passed gated estates, one after another, each mansion larger than the last. Ella's lips parted in shock. She had never been to this part of the city before. The streets were quiet, the air smelled clean, and the houses looked like palaces from another world. Finally, the SUV slowed before a towering golden gate guarded by uniformed men. The driver honked twice. The gate swung open silently, revealing a mansion so vast Ella thought her eyes were deceiving her. Her breath caught in her throat. The compound stretched endlessly, paved with marble tiles that sparkled under the sun. The mansion itself rose majestically with towering pillars, wide glass windows, and a roof that glittered like polished copper. Expensive cars lined the driveway, and servants in white uniforms moved briskly around the compound. Ella clutched Obi's arm in terror. No, this cannot be real. Obi, please tell me this is a dream. Where have you brought me? Obi turned to her, his eyes shining with emotion. He gently brushed away her tears. Ella, this is our home now, and it's time you knew the truth. The car rolled to a stop before the grand entrance. 2 guards opened the doors quickly. Ella stepped out, her knees shaking, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The servants bowed as they murmured, "Welcome, sir." "Welcome, Madam." Ella's vision blurred with tears. She turned to Obi, confusion and fear fighting inside her chest. Why are they calling me Madam? Obi, who are you? He smiled gently, holding her hand firmly. Not Obi the beggar. My name is Obi Nwafor, and Ella, the life you thought was ashes is about to rise like fire. Her lips parted in shock, her world spinning. The grand doors of the mansion creaked open, tall and heavy, like gates into another world. Ella's bare feet hesitated on the marble floor, cold and gleaming like polished ice. Chandeliers glittered overhead, their crystals scattering rainbow light across the vast hall. Golden drapes framed wide glass windows, and the air smelled faintly of roses and cedarwood polish. Ella froze in the doorway, clutching Obi's arm with trembling fingers. Her breath came in shallow gasps. This can't be real, she whispered, her eyes darting from one glimmering detail to another. Obi, are we trespassing? Whose house is this? Servants bowed low as they passed, some murmuring greetings. Welcome, sir. Welcome, madam. Each word struck Ella like a slap. Madam, sir? It made no sense. She turned sharply to Obi, her voice breaking. Why are they calling you, sir? Why are they calling me madam? Obi, answer me. Obi stopped in the center of the vast hall. His ragged clothes seemed almost out of place against the backdrop of wealth, yet his posture was calm, commanding like a man returning to his rightful throne. He turned slowly, his eyes meeting hers with a weight that silenced the air around them. Ella, he said softly, it is time you knew the truth. Ella's chest rose and fell rapidly. She shook her head violently, her lips trembling. No. Don't play with me, Obi. I've seen you beg in the market. I've given you bananas with my own hands. I've watched you sleep on the ground. Don't tell me this was a lie. Obi finished for her. His voice was gentle, but his eyes burned with intensity. No, Ella. The hunger, the shame, the market insults, those were real. I chose them. I walked into that life not because I had nothing, but because I had everything and wanted to see who would love me without it. Ella staggered back, gripping the edge of a chair for support. What are you saying? Obi inhaled deeply. For the first time since she met him, his shoulders straightened with authority, his presence filling the room. My name is not just Obi. I am Obi Nwafor, heir to one of the largest fortunes in Nigeria. This mansion, these cars, these servants, they are all mine. I am a billionaire. The words fell like thunder. Ella's knees buckled. She dropped into the chair, her head spinning. A billionaire, her Obi? The man mocked as a beggar? She buried her face in her palms, tears streaming freely. Why didn't you tell me? Why let me suffer? Why let them mock me every day? Obi, I defended you. I chose you, thinking you had nothing. Obi rushed to her side, kneeling before her. He gently pulled her hands away from her face, his own eyes glistening. Because I had to know, Ella. I had to be sure. The world is filled with people who smile only when the money flows. I needed to see, was there still someone out there who could love me for my soul, not my wealth? So I put on rags. I walked into the dust. I begged for scraps. And there, I found you. Ella's heart twisted. Anger and relief battled in her chest. But you let me live in ruins. You let me starve. Let me shiver in the rain. When all this was here, Obi, do you know what that did to me? Obi's voice cracked, heavy with pain. Do you think I didn't feel it? Do you think it didn't tear me apart to watch you suffer? Every night I wanted to tell you. Every night I almost gave in, but I needed to be sure. And now, Ella, I am sure. You loved me when I had nothing. You held my hand when the world spat on me. You saw a man when everyone else saw trash. He placed her trembling hand over his heart. That is why everything I own, every house, every coin, is now yours too, because you proved to me that love still exists. Ella stared at him, her tears blurring the chandelier lights into stars. Slowly her anger softened, replaced by awe and overwhelming relief. She thought of the mockery, the hunger, the nights on the cold cement. None of it had been wasted. She had passed a test she never even knew she was taking. Her lips quivered into a fragile smile. So all this time, you weren't a beggar? Obi chuckled weakly, brushing away her tears with his thumb. No, but with you, Ella, I would have been content to die one, because you made me rich in ways money could never buy. She let out a shaky laugh, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. Obi, you're mad, completely mad, madly in love with you, he whispered. They both laughed through their tears, their foreheads pressed together. The mansion around them seemed to disappear. Only their hearts remained, bound tighter than ever. Later, Obi led her through the house. They passed through corridors lined with paintings, rooms with velvet curtains, kitchens filled with aromas she had only ever dreamed of. Servants bowed as they walked, but Ella's feet felt heavy, her heart overwhelmed. In one room, Obi stopped and turned to her. Ella, no more sleeping on cold cement. No more hunger, no more shame. From today, you will live like the queen you are. Her lips parted in disbelief as she entered a bedroom bigger than the entire incomplete building. A massive bed draped in silk dominated the room, its sheets white and soft as clouds. Ella touched them with trembling fingers, her mind refusing to accept the reality. This can't be mine. It's yours, Obi said firmly. Everything here is yours. She turned to him, her voice breaking. Why me, Obi? Out of everyone in the world, why choose me? He stepped closer, cupping her face. Because you loved me at my lowest. And if a love can survive ruins, hunger, and humiliation, it deserves to rule empires. That night, Ella stood at the balcony of the mansion, staring out at the glittering lights of the city. She remembered the incomplete building, the whispers in the market, her uncle's cruel words. And now, here she was, standing in a palace, loved by a billionaire who had disguised himself as a beggar. Obi came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. Are you happy? He asked softly. Ella leaned against him, her tears falling silently. More than happy. I'm terrified. This feels too good to be true. Obi kissed her forehead gently. Then let's make it true every single day. And under the night sky with the city spread before them like scattered diamonds, Ella finally allowed herself to believe. The news spread faster than wildfire. By dawn, the market women who once mocked Ella were whispering in disbelief. Have you heard? That beggar? Obi. He's not a beggar at all. They say he is a billionaire. That orphan girl is marrying him. God forbid. How can that be true? But truth, like the morning sun, could not be hidden. Flyers circulated across town. Social media buzzed with photos of Ella in a designer gown at her bridal shower, and convoys of exotic cars lined the streets on the day of the wedding. The church bells of St. Dominic's Cathedral rang loud and proud, announcing the ceremony. The once forgotten girl who sold bananas under the scorching sun now stood in front of gilded doors, radiant in white silk that shimmered like water under sunlight. Her hair was adorned with delicate pearls, her smile trembling with a mix of joy and disbelief. Crowds gathered outside, straining to catch a glimpse. Among them were the very traitors who had mocked her. They stood with wide eyes and hushed lips, unable to comprehend the transformation. "Is this not Ella, the orphan who lived in an incomplete building?" One woman whispered, tears of regret in her eyes. Another shook her head slowly. "Indeed, look at what God has done." Inside the church, Obi stood at the altar, dressed in a navy blue suit tailored to perfection. His eyes never left Ella as she walked down the aisle, escorted by two elderly women who had once shown her kindness in the market. The choir's voices swelled, the organ thundered, and every step she took was a rebuke to those who had despised her. When she finally reached him, Obi's hands trembled as he took hers. His voice broke with emotion as he spoke. "Once I was called a beggar, and once she was called an orphan. But today we are called by one name, love." The congregation erupted in applause, some in tears, others shaking their heads in wonder. At the reception, the hall glittered with chandeliers, golden drapes, and the scent of freshly baked jollof rice and pepper soup. Businessmen, politicians, and dignitaries filled the tables. Yet Obi turned his gaze not to the powerful, but to the humble faces from the market, faces that now carried shame. Rising with a glass of champagne in hand, he addressed them all. "This woman," he said, his voice steady and strong, "chose me when I had nothing. When the world laughed, she held my hand. When they mocked, she defended me. She saw a man where others saw only rags. That love, pure and unshaken, is why today I stand before you as her husband. Let the world learn, true wealth is not in mansions or gold, but in a heart that loves without condition." The hall erupted in thunderous applause. Some traitors who had mocked Ella wept openly, wishing they could undo their words. Others bowed their heads, humbled by the poetic justice of life. As the night deepened, Ella danced in Obi's arms, her laughter ringing louder than the music. She remembered the incomplete building, the hunger, the ridicule, and now here she was, spinning in a ballroom, her copper wire ring replaced by one of pure diamond. When the final song faded, Obi whispered in her ear, "Ella, you are no longer the girl who slept on cold cement. You are my wife, my queen, my everything." Tears of joy filled her eyes as she whispered back, "And you, Obi, are my miracle." The crowd cheered as they kissed, sealing their vows. And outside, in the same market where she had once been mocked, people spoke in hushed tones for weeks. "Never again will we despise the lowly. For who knows, the beggar you scorn today may be the billionaire you bow to tomorrow." Ella's story became more than a wedding tale. It became a legend, a reminder that love found in ruins can stand tall in palaces, and that the world's scorn can never silence a destiny chosen by grace. We truly hope you enjoyed this story. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments section what lessons touched your heart the most. Your voice matters to us. And guess what? Another powerful and unforgettable story is coming your way in just a few days. So make sure to subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and never miss a moment of inspiration. Don't forget to like this video and share it with your family and friends. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next story.